In Hellam Township, Pennsylvania, there exists a legend known as the Seven Gates of Hell, a place where the souls burned alive in the 1962 fire station explosion are said to remain forever trapped beneath the earth. 6 firefighters entered the site. Only 5 returned. Half a century later, Dr. Peter Lang, an archaeologist, led a research team to excavate the long-sealed area. What they uncovered was not evidence of history, but a single collapsed tunnel, cold as a stone grave. Deep inside it lay a flashlight, still illuminated, untouched by time, standing as a silent warning that the 7th gate had never truly closed. Hellam Township, Pennsylvania, is a land veiled in fog and ash, where ancient forests swallow sound and time alike. Beneath this seemingly quiet landscape, the locals have long carried a story, one no one dares to confirm, yet no one dares to deny. The tale of 7 underground gates leading down into hell. According to fragmented records from the 1960s, the site was once home to the Hellam Fire Station, built atop an old tunnel network that connected abandoned natural gas extraction sites. In 1962, a methane explosion engulfed the station in flames, killing nearly the entire crew within minutes. 6 firefighters descended into the tunnels in a rescue attempt. Only 5 emerged. The last man, listed in official files as Fireman 6, was never recovered. When search teams returned, they discovered something new, a metal door leading downward, absent from every blueprint, engraved with 2 words, Room 70. The area was sealed soon after. Authorities labeled it a hazardous zone due to lingering toxic gas. But the people of Hellam believed otherwise. To them, it was a boundary, where the world of the living ended and eternal fire began. Many claimed that on October nights the sound of an old fire siren still echoed from deep underground, and that a faint blue light, like a flashlight beam, continued to flicker through the mist. Nearly 6 decades later, Dr. Peter Lang, an archaeologist specializing in sites buried by war and disaster, was granted permission to survey the location. He did not believe in demons or hellfire, but he was drawn to forgotten places where history blurred into legend. Hellam was a blank spot on the map, and in his mind it felt like a memory that had never been properly unearthed. The excavation team set up camp in early autumn. The air was damp, the soil cold as iron, and the wind moving through the trees produced a sound eerily similar to breathing. Megan, Peter's young assistant, documented the process with a handheld camera. In the opening frame, weak sunlight filtered through the haze, illuminating cracked ground where the fire station once stood. Peter knelt and brushed away a fine layer of ash from a rusted metal fragment. Faded letters slowly emerged. Hellam Fire Station, 1962. Hello, Aruina, Day, Iron 60, How So Boring, 1962. He looked up, his gaze fixed on a distant patch of forest where the earth had sunk inward, forming a perfect circle, as if something had once burned there, then been swallowed whole. That first night, the camp lay still beneath the darkness. Wind passed through exposed cables, producing a long, shrill whine. In Peter's journal, the final line of the day was written in stiff, trembling strokes. Locals call it the 7th gate, but they are wrong. Gates are meant to open. This one was never closed. 2 days after the archaeological team established camp in Hellam, Peter Lang uncovered what he later called the first sign of a buried memory. Inside the town's aging archives, amid rotting records and fire-scorched architectural drawings, he found a single map stained with soot. Black ink had bled across the paper like a spider's web. 6 tunnel routes were clearly numbered, and along the lower edge, where the paper had burned down to charcoal, remained a half-moon fragment with no labels. Near the scorched margin, a nearly erased line of text was still visible. Room 7, Unma. Peter brought the map back to camp and spread it across a wooden table beneath a dim lamp. The aged ink reflected an unnatural sheen, as if it were breathing. He laid a modern geological map over it, aligning both with the course of the Codorus Creek. The lines matched almost perfectly, except for one slight deviation. It pointed directly to the forest where they stood. The location everyone believed to be nothing more than ash aligned precisely with the presumed position of the 7th gate. That night, Megan recorded everything on her camera. The footage shook faintly, the wind hissing through the microphone, blending with her own breathing. In the darkness, Peter redrew the tunnels by hand, his flashlight sweeping across his face, sunken eyes catching the light like glass. Papers were stacked across the table, and among them lay a worn brass tag he had found near the remains of an old fire hydrant. It read, Ferryman 6. No name, only a cold sequence of numbers. Megan moved the camera closer, the metal reflecting a dull glow. When she stepped away, the lens remained open. In that unattended footage, a faint sound rose from beneath the ground, a small metallic clatter, followed by a slow, hollow rhythm, as if someone were tapping on an old pipe. No one in the camp heard it. At dawn, thick fog blanketed the entire area. Peter stepped outside, his boots sinking into soaked earth. He noticed a shallow depression stretching eastward from the remains of the fire station, exactly where the map indicated. The soil there was soft, sunken, and carried the smell of damp metal. When he crouched down, early morning light refracted through rainwater and revealed what lay beneath, a collapsed concrete stairwell, descending into darkness. Peter marked the coordinates with GPS, then covered the opening with a tarp. In his notes he wrote, It appears the tunnel system was never fully buried. The structure remains intact, and if the map is accurate, this is the convergence point of the 6 gates, before entry into the 7th. By late afternoon he placed the map back on the table and scanned it with ultraviolet light. Within the blackened burn marks, a faint spiral of ink emerged. It was not a technical symbol, but something older, resembling an inverted rune, or the number 6 repeated again and again. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the tent violently. Inside, the lamp flickered, and in that brief instant, Peter thought he saw someone standing behind the tent flap, a figure in an old firefighter's coat, motionless, breathless. When he turned back, there was nothing but the swinging bulb and empty air. That night, Megan's recording ended on a single lingering frame, the tarp-covered tunnel entrance, rising and falling slightly, as if it were breathing. In Peter's journal, the final line of the 2nd day read, Tomorrow, we go in. The following morning, Hellam lay beneath a fog so dense that the boundary between earth and sky had completely dissolved. Peter Lang carried a flashlight, a stratigraphic scanner, a small notebook, and Megan's handheld camera. Together, they pulled back the tarp covering the opening. Below them was absolute darkness, deep, dry, and hollow, as if the fire of 1962 had drained the ground itself of breath. The first steps were shattered. Peter secured a rope around a nearby tree and lowered himself slowly. The air changed instantly, cold, heavy, and damp enough to cling to the lungs. Each footstep echoed through the old concrete tunnel, the sound rebounding as though it were coming from behind them. Megan followed, the camera light cutting across soot-stained walls streaked with black and gray. The first gates appeared like scars carved into the body of the earth. The first gate, a rusted steel door left wide open, the air inside reeking of burned wiring. The second gate, a half-collapsed stone arch, its frame smeared with dark brown handprints. At the third gate, the camera light revealed deep gouges in the wall, carved as if by blades, forming shapes Peter could not read. With every gate they passed, the air grew colder, the silence heavier. By the fourth gate, their breath condensed into visible vapor. The temperature gauge read 38° F, despite it being mid-September above ground. Megan panned the camera forward. On the screen, a faint light drifted slowly ahead of them, as if someone were walking just meters in front, carrying a lamp. Peter stopped. He listened. From deeper within the tunnel came a muted sound, 3 deliberate knocks, then nothing. The fifth gate was sealed by a fractured slab of concrete. Peter forced it open with a crowbar, revealing a cavity beyond. The earth inside had been fused into a glass-like surface. When his flashlight swept across it, he saw warped fragments of metal, part of a charred helmet, and something resembling a human hand pressed deep into the wall. Fingernails clawed so violently they had torn through concrete. Megan stepped back. The camera slipped from her hands, its light spinning across the ground. Within the rolling frame, a brief image flashed, a figure in an old firefighter's coat passing through the haze, then dissolving into thin smoke. When Peter bent down to retrieve the camera, his light swept the wall behind it, and he saw footprints smeared in ash, leading deeper into the tunnel. One direction only. No signs of return. They moved on, past the sixth gate. The air was thick as ash. The smell of metal and sulfur coated every breath. The tunnel narrowed, its walls warped and eaten away by heat, curling inward like burned flesh. The camera began to hiss with static. The battery drained rapidly, without explanation. Ahead stood a wall of complete blackness, where the map ended. Peter shone his light forward. The beam reflected back at him, as if striking glass. It was neither stone nor steel, but a translucent, dull surface that mirrored his face. And in that reflection, there was another shape standing just behind his shoulder, tall, dressed in a scorched uniform, a firefighter's helmet marked with the number 6. The light flickered. From within the wall came a long, resonant exhalation, deep and hollow, like fire roaring through metal. The ground trembled faintly beneath Peter's feet. He stepped back, but Megan's flashlight slipped from her grip, its beam striking the mirrored surface head-on. For an instant, the plane fractured, a thin crack glowing red-hot, like steel split while molten hot. Megan screamed, but no sound carried. There was only the electric hum of failing equipment and the heavy, pounding rhythm of a heart. The camera fell. The final frame captured the tunnel ceiling swallowed in smoke, and at its center stood a third figure, perfectly still, as red light surged outward and consumed everything. When Peter Lang opened his eyes, the world around him was no longer the old concrete tunnel. There was no camera noise, no flashlight beam, only absolute silence, thick and cold, as if compressed inside solid ice. The space before him stretched into a metallic corridor, dimly illuminated by a low, flickering firelight, as though seen through layers of smoke. There was no visible exit, only soot-coated walls that shimmered faintly, rising and falling as if they were breathing. He tried to call out for Megan, but the sound dissolved before leaving his lips. What remained was a distant echo of his own voice, fading as though it belonged to someone else. At the far end of the corridor, a thin line of light glimmered, his flashlight still burning, its glow steady and unchanged, as if it no longer obeyed time. Peter moved forward, each step heavy, as though dragging himself through memory itself. Along the walls appeared narrow glass panels. Inside them played the fire of 1962, memories rendered with such clarity that he could feel the heat radiating from the images. He saw the crew, 6 men, running through the flames. They slammed against the walls, trying to break free. One of them turned back, his face blackened by smoke, his eyes wide and burning red. On his helmet, the number 6 gleamed in the firelight. Peter stopped. A chill ran down his spine. In the memory, he was there too, the 7th firefighter, the only one who survived. He remembered the blinding flash, the roar of the explosion, and a hand pulling him from the wreckage, though no one ever knew whose hand it was. He had never told anyone that before losing consciousness, he heard a voice whisper through the smoke. "If the fire goes out, we disappear." Now, within this corridor, that fire still burned, in every pane of glass, in every beat of his heart. The walls began to change. The glass panels trembled, then shattered one by one. From the smoke, figures emerged, warped by heat, their forms distorted, their skin cracked and glowing red from within like embers. They moved slowly, not looking at Peter, but toward the burning flashlight at the end of the corridor. Peter understood. They had not come to punish him. They were trapped, suspended between flame and darkness. Room 7 was not a gate leading down into hell. It was a chamber meant to preserve those who had not yet been forgotten. The flashlight was the curse, the light of Fireman 6, a restless soul forced to burn on, imprisoning the other 6 flames. The final wall melted away, revealing a circular chamber. At its center lay the old flashlight, resting on scorched tile. Its beam flickered weakly, like the pulse of a dying heart. Surrounding it, carved into the walls, layer upon layer, were hand-scratched words, overlapping, repeated endlessly. "Keep the fire burning." Peter stepped closer. With each step, the light dimmed. The figure of Fireman 6 stood behind the flashlight, his face half human, half charred coal. His eyes burned without hatred, only emptiness. The number 6 on his helmet slowly melted, dripping like wax. Peter knelt, his hands trembling. He understood that extinguishing the light would free them, but it would also open the gate the fire had kept sealed for more than 60 years. The choice was not between salvation and destruction, but between memory and oblivion. He touched the flashlight. The light weakened. The chamber began to tremble. Metal rang through the space like distant fire bells. The surrounding walls cracked, large sections collapsing to reveal ash and blackened skeletons beneath. They, the ones who had burned with him that day, began to dissolve into dust. The flashlight flickered one final time. In its dying glow, Peter saw his younger self, the young firefighter gripping a hose, watching his comrades fall. That gaze, the gaze of the survivor, was the very thing that had kept the gate open. When the light went out completely, he heard wind, not in the tunnel, but inside his mind. A long exhalation, then silence. Everything fell into darkness. Somewhere above the surface, Megan's camera stopped recording. The final image held only a faint reflection of light at the tunnel entrance before it vanished. 3 weeks after the archaeological team lost contact, local authorities dispatched a search unit to Hellam Township. The forest where the fire station once stood had already been sealed off, yet a weak emergency signal from Dr. Peter Lang's tracking device continued to transmit, a steady pulse, rhythmic and persistent, like a heartbeat. When the rescue team arrived, they found the camp abandoned. The tents had collapsed, equipment lay dust-covered, and at the center of the excavation site, a tunnel entrance stood open. A faint warmth still drifted from its mouth, though the interior was swallowed by complete darkness. Megan's camera was recovered nearby, its lens cracked and coated with ash. Among the remaining data was a single final clip. Peter, kneeling underground, the beam of his flashlight illuminating his face from below, then suddenly flaring with blinding intensity, like a headlamp switched on at full power. The image burned white before cutting to total black. There was no sound, no movement. The official report listed the cause of disappearance as a tunnel collapse due to structural instability. There was no mention of the 7 gates of hell, no reference to fire beneath the ground. Yet 1 week after the site was sealed again, a forest ranger reported seeing a flickering light in the restricted area, dim, yellowed, unmistakably like a flashlight still burning. That winter, heavy snow blanketed the region. Beneath the white cover, warmth continued to rise from the earth. A group of geology students, drawn by rumors of the disappearance, trespassed into the old zone and discovered an object half buried in the mud. An old firefighter's helmet, the number 6 engraved on its crown. Inside, they found a charred fragment of a notebook, Peter Lang's handwriting, warped and uneven. The final legible line read, "The 7th room isn't below us, it's within us. The fire never dies." Soon after, the Hellam forest was permanently fenced off. The entry ban remains in effect to this day. No further excavations, no camps. And yet, locals still claim that on fog-heavy nights, when the wind carries the damp breath of the Codorus Creek through the trees, a faint fire siren can be heard echoing in the woods. A dim glow, like a living ember, appears between the blackened branches, sways gently, then sinks back into the ground. Every year, on the anniversary of the 1962 fire, the light returns. No one knows where it comes from. Some believe it is the spirit of Fireman 6, still guarding the gate. Others believe that since Peter Lang descended into the tunnel, the undying flame has chosen a new keeper. In the town archives, the case file has been officially closed. But on the final page of the archaeological report, beneath the faded typewritten text, a line appears to have been added by hand, written in a different script, darker, more erratic. Site status: active. The flame still burns. Night settles over Hellam Township. Fog creeps through the charred trees, spreading toward the buried tunnel entrance. Beneath the silent soil, a tiny spark flickers, dims, then flares again. Patient. Enduring. Unextinguished. The flame still burns. And it always will.